You have 1 year left until you graduate from college and your storyboard portfolio is avoided out Ghost Town. In order to accomplish your mission, by the time you run out of time, you must become a storyboard speedrunner.
So, that's the plan. I'm trying to build an entire storyboard portfolio before the year ends. I'm aiming to make one short thing every month, so I'll have at least 10 storyboards to share in my portfolio. This series is meant to show my process and hopefully help me improve in some way. And who knows, maybe someone out there will learn something too. Now, for this episode, I need some characters. And luckily, I have some right here in my old sketchbook from 3 years ago. So, the initial idea for them was that there were these two business coworkers who work a regular 9 to 5 who get dragged into this alternate world within the walls of the establishment. Like, they need to get more copy paper from the closet at the end of West Hall, but no one's been there in years. They make their way to the closet door and open it to find nothing. But as they walk in, they find themselves walking back out in another realm, still without copy paper. There we go, I've redrawn our two characters, Venus and Luth, and an extra third character for our plot, a paper witch. For this sequence, I wanted to try my hand at an action scene. Though I love action and active poses, I tend to avoid those shots when it comes to animation. Maybe if I try it out now, I can pinpoint the issues and problems I need to fix going forward. So I'm going to start out thumbing the idea. Thumbs, or thumbnails, are really just an easy way to brainstorm a sequence, and they don't have to make much sense to anybody else really. They're mainly just for scribbling out how everything's going to go down. I'm aiming to start and end this board in the middle of the story, in a way that defines at least one of the characters' personalities, probably Venus, or Ven is what I usually call her. So this story is a moment where Venus approaches a paper witch to save Luth, who's tied up at the top of this tower. The main challenge here is portraying a long stretch of action in a way that isn't disjointed and choppy. So, now this looks like a bunch of scribbles, but let's go over what we're working with. We're starting the scene with the main character stepping into a sort of establishing shot, where we can see the entire tower and how far it is from the character. Said character enters and then it switches to on top of the tower. The viewer or audience won't know it's the top of the tower until the next shot, where the witch is looking down to where our original character is calling up to them. The conversation is interrupted by our tied-up friend who probably gets shut up by a comedic back and forth over the shoulder shot. Just to fully cement that they are definitely on the same tower, we have a shot of them talking on it. This same shot is used again when our first obstacle gets dispersed from the top, which are a bunch of paper helicopters, like this one. Looking at the shot in the next one, there seems to be a bit of a problem. The main character is shown going forward from right to left to encounter these paper copters, which also enter their own shot, going right to left. The same direction. So I did draw them switching directions later, but I think this would be cause for some confusion. I'll have to remember to switch the direction the helicopters enter from when I, finish. Anyway, the spinning helicopters fly up and cut Ven's sleeve, who then runs, jumps up and lands slow-mo on a helicopter, and uses it to jump higher. I want them to do it again but from a different angle, to help show what exactly happened in the last shot, without being too repetitive. We get a close-up and zoom out of our witch summoning long paper streamers, which we reverse shot to have Ven notice and then be surrounded by. They zip around, tripping her, grabbing her foot, and then hurling her into the air. Each action is a different shot, one after the other, to keep the pace up. We get to see our witch again, with Ven continuing her flight in the background until crashing in the same area as the witch, who begins to yell at the streamer who dropped Ven in there. Ven begins to walk in, the witch turns around, and we are hit with a sudden explosion of paper, with Ven holding scissors or something in the center of the screen where the witch was. So the weapon magically disappears and Ven and Luth are finally together at the top of the tower. That's a lot. Okay, so now, because this is an action-focused storyboard, I guess we wanted to move to properly show off the action. The storyboarders I follow on Twitter tend to do this, so I think it's preferred that action shots are animatics. So we're gonna try that out. Here we go. I don't have a proper storyboarding program, but I do have an animation program, so I'm gonna see how this goes. And finally, after 2 days of stopping and starting, we have our first storyboard. I made a few slight changes and additions in the final product, but let's take a look. I tried to slow the pace considerably when she finally landed on the tower, slowly getting up and approaching, building up, and then stopped. After watching it a few times, I've noticed some important parts, like the knife turning back into a bracelet, have been too close to the edge of the screen. However, if that point wasn't important at the time, like it was introduced before in like an earlier shot, maybe that could get a pass, but, we'll see. Another thing, when she looks back at her arm, it's hard to notice any issues after it's been cut. Perhaps it would be easier to notice in a finished product where there's color, but in the boards, it's hard to notice by itself. So maybe a bit of shading or color in the area would help bring attention to the change. Something to take note of later, I guess. And there you have it. A full accidental minute of animatic boards and one thing to add to the portfolio. What'd you think? Was the story easy to read or difficult to parse? I'll have to think about all of this later in the next episode of Storyboard Speedrunner, but for now, I'm going back to bed.